What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Wales, New Jersey, checking in for UFC 304 from Manchester, England this Saturday night. Let's take a look at it. Let's check it out. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2, live from a Co-op Live in Manchester, UK. First fight of the night on the early prelims: Sean O'Bannon versus Alice Adderley. Then we move to Mick Parkin versus Lucas Brzezinski in the heavyweight division. Then we got Sam Patterson versus Kiefer Crosby, Britain versus Ireland competition there, should be a good scrap. Then we go to Manuel Cap versus Muhammad Mokaev. Good scrap here, 6-0 Mokaev coming in against the 3-2 Manuel Cap. Pretty even here. Muhammad has a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach. Mokaev is 6-0 in the UFC. He's on a bit of a tear, to be fair with him. Finishing fights by arm triangle, rear naked choke, arm bar, and decision. He's beat Alex Perez, Tim Elliott, Rafael Fahino, Malcolm Gordon, Charles Johnson, Cody Durden. He's beat some pretty good fighters in there. And let's not forget, he has an extensive amateur background. He was 22 in the amateurs, going back all the way to 2015. Good fighter is Muhammad Mokaev, going up against Manuel Map from Portugal. 4-2, my bad, in the UFC. Coming off a win against Felipe dos Santos and David Dvorak. The thing you notice though is that he has pulled out of a lot of fights. He's had a lot of fights cancelled on him due to injury or his opponent pulling out by injury. And he's got a very brash confidence about him, his old Cap. You remember at that last press conference, was it 293 Adesanya versus Strickland? He just went after everybody in that. It was very entertaining, very funny. I got a good laugh out of it. So that should be a good scrap day. Muhammad Mokaev versus Manuel Cap. Then we go to the feature bout of the early prelims. My boy, the Welshman, Oban Elliott versus Preston Parsons. Elliott is 10-2, and Parsons is 11-4. 6 foot versus 5'11", to 1 inch height, 1 inch reach advantage for the Welshman. Let's take a look here. Oban Elliott is 1-0 in the UFC, coming off a win against Val Woodburn. It was a decision win. And he got to the UFC on Dana White's Contender Series versus Kiak Brito, but it was a majority win. Good, very good scrap. So it's only the second fight in the UFC for the Welshman. He is going up against Preston Parsons, who is 2-2 in the UFC, coming off a win versus Matthew Semmelsberger, lost to Chevin Giles, beat Evan Elder, and lost to Daniel Rodriguez. Be a pretty interesting fight for the Welshman, Oban Elliott. It's a tough match for him for his second fight in the UFC. As you can see, he is the underdog here at plus 120. So, good scrap. Kicking off the prelims, Modestas Bukauskas versus Marcin Prachnio. Modestas has a 4-inch reach on him. The height is even. Let's take a look at these guys a little bit closer. Modestas is 3-4 in the UFC. 7-1 in Cage Warriors, coming off a loss to Vito Petrino. He did go on a 3-fight losing streak back in 2020 that rolled into 2021. He had that horrible, devastating loss against Khalil Roundtree, that sidekick to the knee. That hurt just watching that, man. He went back to Cage Warriors for a couple of fights, got some wins over there, and then came right back to the UFC, defeated Tyson Pedro and Zach Punga. And then in his last fight, he lost to Vito Petrino. Going up against Marcin Prachnio. Marcin Prachnio is 4-5 in the UFC. His last fight was a win against Devin Clark. He also lost to Vito Petrino and defeated William Knight. Pretty close, even fight there in the light heavyweight division. I'm rolling with Modi in this one. Let's go Modi. After that, Jake Hadley versus Kaulan Loran. Another England versus Ireland matchup, should be a good scrap. After that, Molly McCann versus Bruna Brazil. The popular Molly Meatball McCann faces another Brazilian in the octagon. I think that's her 9th Brazilian fight she's fought in her career. She does give up a 2-inch height advantage and a slight reach advantage. Molly McCann is 7-5 in the UFC, coming off a win against Diana Belbita. Before that, she did have a couple of losses against Julia, can't pronounce that, and Erin Branchfield. And before that, she had 2 brilliant knockouts with the spinning back elbows and punches against Hannah Goldie and Laura Carolina. So as always, an entertaining fighter is Molly McCann. She will be facing Bruna Brazil. She is 1-2 in the UFC, coming off a loss to Loma Lookboonmee. Before that, she beat Shauna Bannon, and she has a loss against Denise Gomez. This looks like a little bit of a try and get Molly back in the win column here, because she is a fan favorite. She's -360, so she's a big favorite in this fight, fighting only 40 minutes away from Liverpool in Manchester. So she will have the home crowd advantage. And after that, the main event of the prelims, Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda. Kicking off the main card of the evening, Arnold Allen versus Giga Jacasey. This is a good fight to kick off the main card. Arnold Allen gives up the height advantage and does give up a 4-inch reach advantage, but Arnold Allen has been in the UFC since 2015. He is 10-2. His last 2 fights have been defeats against Max Holloway and Musa Elivov, but he has beaten Calvin Kattar, Dan Hooker, Sadiq Youssef, Nick Blentz, Gilbert Melendez, and the list goes on. He's going up against Giga Jacasey, the kickboxer, who is 8-1 in the UFC, with his only loss coming to Calvin Kattar. Now, they do have a mutual opponent in Calvin Kattar. Arnold Allen beat him, and Giga Jacasey lost to him. Arnold Allen, when he fought Arnold Allen, he did have a knee injury, but we could say that Arnold Allen caused the knee injury by kicking him in the legs. So it could go either way. But this should be a good scrap, very good scrap. 2 high-level strikers here. I think Arnold Allen might try and mix it up a little bit and take him to the ground. Try and mix it up. But I got Arnold Allen by decision. Next up, Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez. CLD versus RoboCop. In the middleweight division. Pretty even on the height, and 4-inch reach for CLD. Christian Leroy Duncan is 3-1 in the UFC, fighting out of the UK. His last 2 fights were very impressive, especially this one against Claudio Ribeiro. That was a good win for him. Looked very impressive in that fight. He is a stand-up striker. Some very crisp, clean striking. He's going up against the Brazilian Gregory Rodriguez, who is 6-2 in the UFC, coming off wins against Brad Tavares and Dennis. This is going to be an interesting fight, because if this fight goes to the ground, I think it could be all Gregory Rodriguez. But if CLD can keep it on the feet, keep the distance, and get his hands on him, I think it could be a 2nd round TKO. I got Christian Leroy Duncan 2nd round TKO for this one. Next up, King Green versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. Number 15th ranked lightweight, formerly known as Bobby King Green. He legally changed his name to King versus Paddy Pimblett. We all know who Paddy the Baddy is. Very even here on the tail of the tape. The height is the same. Paddy has a 2-inch reach advantage. Paddy is 5-0 in the UFC. His last win was against Tony Ferguson. This one though, Jared Gordon, that a lot of people, myself included, didn't think that he won that fight. If you go back and watch it, but other than that, he's done pretty well in the UFC. Coming up against the veteran of the UFC, King Green. King Green is 13-10 in the UFC. He's been there since 2013. This guy has been in the UFC. If you want to talk about experience in the octagon, this guy brings it all. He's 13-10, but experience is key. Has he fought the best of the best? Not really, but it is what it is. His last win was against Jim Miller. Before that, his last defeat was against Jamin Turner. These guys don't like each other. They have not had good things to say about each other this week. When Paddy was asked about King Green's name change, this is what he said.
Oh, it shows what a dickhead he is. You know what I mean? Like, imagine being nearly 40 years of age and changing your name to King. It's embarrassing, lad. You know what I mean? Grow up, innit? Like, as I've said in other interviews, CTE is real.
So, this should be a good scrap. I think, this is a tough fight for Paddy. If he can get him down to the ground, I think Paddy has a real good chance of getting his signature rear naked choke in on him. If he gets his back, I do believe it's over. But King Green is well-rounded in the UFC. He does have a complete game. So this is going to be a tough one. The bookies are siding with King Green at -125. Paddy is a +105. I'm picking Paddy in this fight. I'm going to put a couple of quid on the underdog on this one. Should be a good fight though. That brings us to the co-main event of the evening. Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes. The rematch. Tom Aspinall is 6'5". Curtis is 6'4", 1 inch height advantage for Tom, but he gives up a 2-inch reach advantage. Tom Aspinall has been on an absolute tear since he's been in the UFC. He is 7-1, with his only defeat coming against Curtis Blaydes. But 15 seconds into the fight, he blew his knee out, blew his ACL out, went right down. It wasn't really much of a fight. We didn't really see anything. It was very unfortunate. But other than that, he's finished every single fight that he's had in the UFC, whether it be by ground and pound, by a submission, by a knockout, by arm lock, hooks, hammer fists. He's done it all, man. Tom Aspinall is an absolute destined to be the heavyweight champion. It all depends on John Jones or in this fight. But he's going up against Curtis Blaydes, the veteran of the heavyweight division in the UFC. Curtis is 13-4 in the UFC. His last win coming against Jailton Almeida. Before that, he lost to Sergey Pavlovich. And he beat Tom with a knee. It wasn't really a win though. And wins against Chris Dawkins, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, lost to Derek Lewis, devastating uppercut. So, co-main event, this is going to be a good scrap here, lads. Very good scrap. Tom Aspinall, I believe, he's on a steam train to the top of this division. This guy is just athletic, fast, has power, has skill on the feet and on the ground. I'm really looking forward to this fight. Going to be an absolute banger. I'm picking Tom Aspinall by second round submission. Main event of the evening, Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad for the welterweight title. Leon Edwards is 1 inch taller and has a 2-inch reach on him. Leon Edwards, current welterweight champion, who is 14-2 in the UFC, with his last win coming against Colby Covington, and before that 2 times against Kamaru Usman, 1 for the belt. Headshot dead. The head kick heard around the world. Knockout of the year, absolutely brilliant. But he is on a 12-fight win streak, with his last defeat coming against Kamaru Usman back in 2015. The guy has been on an unbelievable tear. Unbelievable tear. Now he's going up against another man who's been on a tear, Belal Muhammad, who is 14-3 in the UFC, with his last win coming against Gilbert Burns, before that Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Stephen Thompson, Damian Maia, Diego Lima. Last time Belal lost was against Jeff Neal back in 2019 by decision. Belal has had a lot of hate towards Leon during this fight. I don't know why, where it comes from. Maybe it was because of the first fight that they had. They did fight before where it was a no contest. Leon did poke Belal in the eye in the second round. I heard something about that. Belal was coming off of eye surgery before going into that fight, and well, maybe that had something to do with it, because we've seen fighters get poked in the eye before, and we've seen some fighters continue, but Belal did not want to continue. Therefore, it went to a no contest, and they went on their way. But now they're meeting again for the belt. But it should be a good fight. I'm very excited to watch this fight. I think Leon gets it done in the 4th round. I do believe he TKOs Belal in the 4th. Anything could happen. It is in Manchester. It is on American time. So over there in Manchester, it's going to be about 6 o'clock in the morning when they fight, which is very unusual. The UFC did the British fans dirty with that one. They could have put that on the afternoon and still sold it, but it is what it is. But looking forward to this card, lads. It's going to be an absolute scrapper of a card. The British fans always bring it when they go over to London or to Manchester in a brand new arena over there. It should be a good fight. Enjoy the fights. Tune into Leather to the Face, where we will be calling the fight over on G Nation Inside Sports with Big Blue Lou and Big Pat Sports Talk. Tune in, lads. God bless.